As the traditional events following the death of a pope unfold, the Holy See has scheduled the papal conclave to select Francis's successor to start next Wednesday. EWTN News' editorial director Dr. Matthew Bunson explains the conclave process and protocols.
While the secrecy surrounding the election of a new pope, or a conclave, is often touted, the rules that govern every moment of this global event are available to everyone in a document called an Apostolic Constitution that has the full Latin title of Universi Dominici Gregis, meaning the shepherd of the Lord's whole flock. The current conclave rules built on centuries of traditions and previous election decrees and was first issued in 1996 by Pope St. John Paul II and superseded the rules on papal elections issued in 1975 by Pope St. Paul VI. The decree remains in effect for this conclave, with minor changes having been made by Pope Benedict XVI and Pope Francis. Apostolic constitutions are the most solemn form of legislation issued by a pope, showing the gravity that is taken in holding conclaves. Pope Benedict XVI notably restored the requirement of a two-thirds majority for the election of a pope in 2007, and Francis simplified the funeral rite and modified the verifications of the death of a pope. This critical document has two parts: the protocol for doing the necessary administrative work of the Holy See in the period between popes, as well as the rites for a papal funeral. The second part explains the rules of the actual conclave and protocols surrounding the papal inauguration. To vote in the conclave, a cardinal must be under the age of 80. That means that at the death of Pope Francis, 135 cardinals out of more than 250 were eligible to take part. 2 cardinals have so far announced they will not be participating for reasons of health, so the conclave will be attended by 133 cardinal electors. Cardinals over the age of 80 have been excluded from voting since 1970. On the appointed day, in this case the afternoon of May 7th, the cardinal electors will process solemnly from the Pauline Chapel in the Apostolic Palace into the Sistine Chapel. There, each elector will take an oath to observe the procedures and maintain secrecy.
Sic me Deus adjuvet, et haec sancta Dei Evangelia quae manum mea.
With the famed command, extra homines, or everyone out, by the papal master of ceremonies, the doors of the Sistine are closed, and only the cardinal electors remain. As the name suggests from the Latin, cum clave, with a key, the cardinals are ceremonially locked in the chapel, a practice in use since 1274. From the start of the conclave until its end, they have no contact with the outside world until a new pope is chosen. On day 1, the cardinals cast 1 ballot. On day 2 and 3, they cast 2 in the morning and 2 in the afternoon. On day 4, if no successor is chosen after those 9 ballots, the electors break for as long as 1 day for prayer. Then the process begins again and continues with breaks in the voting should the cardinals remain deadlocked. After 30 total votes without an election of a new pope, a change is made. The cardinals resume voting, but now they must choose only between the 2 leading candidates, who are themselves barred from voting. However, the rules are firm. There can be no waiving of the requirements that there must be a clear majority of at least 2/3 of the votes of the cardinals for an election to be valid. When a cardinal reaches the 2/3 threshold of votes, 89 for this conclave, the most senior cardinal approaches the winner and asks if he accepts election. If he does, he is next asked by what name he shall be called. From that moment, he exercises full and supreme power over the universal church. As the cardinals discern who will fill the chair of St. Peter, the world eagerly watches the roof of the Sistine Chapel. After the conclusion of voting in the morning and the afternoon, the ballots are burned and smoke billows out of the chapel installed in the Sistine Chapel, shown here during the last conclave in 2013. Black smoke means no candidate reached a 2/3 majority and the voting must continue. White smoke means a new pope has been chosen.
Habemus Papam.
The senior cardinal deacon makes the announcement Habemus Papam, Latin for we have a pope. The new pontiff is introduced on the loggia of St. Peter's Basilica and greets the world as a new pontificate begins.
From Vatican City, I'm Matthew Bunson for EWTN News In Depth.
Joining us now to discuss more about how the conclave operates is Monsignor Roger Landry, the National Director of the Pontifical Mission Societies USA. He's a familiar face to our viewers as he's been co-hosting our live daily interregnum coverage from St. Peter's Square here on EWTN. Monsignor, thank you for joining us on top of all the great coverage you've already been providing. First, can you explain what these days look like for the cardinals during this interregnum period leading up to the conclave? For many, they are meeting for the first time.
Many of the cardinals are meeting each other for the first time during these days. It starts early for the cardinals. Some of them do the masses in the afternoon, the Novum Dialis masses we've been broadcasting from EWTN. Others are celebrating mass from groups. They're having breakfasts. They're getting ready, and they're generally heading to the Paul VI Audience Hall, which has the Synod Hall built within it, in order to be able to have 3.5 hours of discussions each morning. And then they've got private discussions in the afternoon, and sometimes they're likewise called back even prior to this Mass in St. Peter's every afternoon. So they're working hard, learning a lot, seeing each other, having the conversations about the good of the church and which of them will be best to lead that church into that good.
A really critical time. Monsignor, during this interregnum period, across the internet, there are Catholics who are posting about cardinals they would like to see be elected pope. It can almost feel like a Catholic campaign season rather than a divinely inspired process. But Monsignor, what is that dynamic like among the cardinals from your understanding? Is there politicking in this process? Is there campaigning?
Anytime there are human beings, there are some conversations about the good of the human person. That's what we're talking about in politics, as Plato and Aristotle would have understood it, as St. Thomas Aquinas would have understood it. And so they're taking their responsibilities seriously. They're not waiting for a Damascus moment for God somehow supernaturally to show them who should be the next successor of St. Peter. So they're having conversations about it, but they're doing so with spiritual discernment, knowing that the Lord is helping them, that the Lord is watching them, that the Lord is guiding those discussions. And so I would much rather have Catholics concerned about the process than apathetic to it, but beyond thinking and posting about which candidates they'd like to have, I'd urge them to pray for the cardinals and to pray for whoever's going to walk out on that balcony behind me next week.
That's a great reminder. Monsignor, the College of Cardinals exceeds the limit of 120 cardinal electors that was established by St. Paul VI. Can you explain that and break down the numbers a bit for us? How many cardinals will be voting?
So there are 252 cardinals total. There are 135 who are eligible to vote because they're under 80. 2 are too sick to come, and so we're expecting 133 voters. You're right that St. Paul VI decreed that there's supposed to be 120 electors, but 2 days ago, the cardinals here acknowledged that, but acknowledged that the Pope himself, who is the supreme legislator in the church, is able to exceed that man-made limit. And so it was implied, they said, by Pope Francis naming more cardinals than the 120 limit, that he wanted, at least for this time period, to have them increased. And so all 133 cardinals under 80 who will be present here in Rome will be entering the Sistine Chapel to vote.
Thank you for clarifying that. Monsignor, in an interview with NBC, New York's Cardinal Timothy Dolan shared a rare insight into what the cardinals may be considering as they discern the next pontiff. Let's take a listen to this.
That's probably what we would look for. Somebody with the same style of Francis, that warmth, that heart, that smile, that goodness, that embrace, and maybe within a little bit of a blend with John Paul and Benedict when it would come to more, what would I say, more clarity in teaching, more refinement of the church's tradition, more digging in the treasures of the past to remind us of what Jesus expects of us now. Probably a blend of the great popes that we've recently had. That's what we'd be looking for.
Monsignor, how much should we glean from that exchange? And dare I ask, which cardinals fit that mold?
I think we should glean a lot because Cardinal Dolan wasn't just speaking for himself. They're all looking for somebody who would blend the real virtues of all the popes who have lived, but especially the previous ones. Cardinal Dolan and many of the cardinals want somebody with John Paul II's courage, that'd love to have somebody, even though we're not going to find one, with Pope Benedict's brains. But Pope Francis himself taught the whole church how to love better. And so we can't lose that inheritance. And so they are looking for somebody who checks as many of these boxes as possible, as much as possible. And God the Holy Spirit can provide those courageous, smart, loving men to lead the whole church to be able to imitate them in these ways of living.
Well, Monsignor, again, thank you for all the great work you've been doing. We join our prayers with yours in Rome. Thank you for joining us now.
Thanks so much, Catherine.